Okay, we'll go ahead and call this meeting to order. It is 9:02. If you could please stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
Okay, before we get started with open comment, I'd like to request the policy board to allow Mr. Sal Alonso to sit on the board until the MPO receives the actual resolution from the County of El Paso. He's been appointed by the county, but has not yet received the resolution. Is that all right with the board? Okay, there's a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. And then I'd like to welcome not only Mr. Alonso, but then also Mr. Castañeda, who is not here, but who will now represent Anthony instead of Ms. Murillo, who's been appointed to TPAC. Okay, open comment period. And I believe we have one speaker, Mr. Rooney.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mike Rooney. If you'll look at Mr. Medina's comments, they have the list on the projects for, what is it, the call for projects for Prop 1. That's basically the list was shown last month. If you'll check under the minutes, I asked that one of the projects that to be added would be to remove the toll from the third lane, the interior lane of the border highway from Zaragoza to downtown. If you go back over the last 10 years and look at all the public comments that officials that attend this body have made, one of the problems was always to get the traffic, heavy traffic off of the I-10 through the center of town. And you could either go the Northeast Expressway or go the border highway. It seems like if we're trying to get people to use that highway, help the congestion on I-10, we ought to be able to put a little money on to take that toll off. In an email exchange I had with Representative Pickett, when I sent that suggestion in, he said that he could find no bonded indebtedness on that border highway, and he said he believed that Texas had the power, that TxDOT had the power to remove that toll, work with El Paso to remove that toll. And by doing that, basically what you're doing is you're stretching the Prop 1 funds further. So I asked that that be added to the call for projects. And I noticed that all the institutional interest and special interest has submitted their projects. So I'm asking that a taxpayer-generated one be put on. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, we have no other speakers? Okay. Since we're a little thin on quorum, just in case we lose quorum, we're going to move items up around a bit. Good morning, Mayor. Let's move on to item number 3, approve the minutes for November 7th, 2014. Is there a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved. Second.
There's a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Next, let's move on to item number 4, approve the 2015 TPB schedule.
Good morning, members. Michael Mina with the El Paso MPO. What you see before you is the calendar for 2015 of the potential meetings for this policy board. What we're introducing here would fall in line to give you all the opportunity to comment or respond to any of the steps in Texas or New Mexico. So essentially what we're doing is that we're removing the first week of the meeting and we're trying to centralize it during the middle of the month. What I would want to point out for you all is that the items that you see highlighted, specifically those dates, those will be the dates that we would be taking action to respond or submit anything to the statewide transportation improvement program. With this also is that TPAC would meet the first week of the month, and then the executive committee would meet on the second week of the month. If anybody has any questions or comments.
Yes, ma'am.
Why not like the last week of the month or the fourth week, the fourth Friday of the month? Kind of, I don't know, I just, first. There's just,
Usually, the submittals for this STIP fall right before either the third or the fourth week of the month.
I have a standing commitment, so on the third week of the month, that's the reason that.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
I have a commitment on the third week of the month.
Oh, I see, okay,
So that's the only reason I'm asking.
okay.
But the rest of the board approves, that's fine.
I guess we could look at that, but certainly, we would have to shuffle the calendar, but I think if we're able to.
That's okay. That's okay, I'm fine. I'll make some other arrangements.
Okay, very well.
Okay. So we need action on this item?
Yes, please.
Okay. Is there a motion to approve the schedule attached? There's a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Let's move on to item number 5, a resolution authorizing the TPB chairperson to execute the memorandum of the agreement between the El Paso MPO and the Mesilla Valley MPO.
Again, Michael Mina with the El Paso MPO. Back in 2009, these two boards, along with the governor of New Mexico at the time, had agreed to extend or change the planning areas between the then Las Cruces MPO, now Mesilla Valley MPO, and the El Paso MPO. And so at the time is that although we had approval to make those changes, it was not memorialized in who would do what in terms of planning activities. So the standing language that's before you is it will memorialize that. So in essence, the El Paso urbanized area is in New Mexico, and now New Mexico is responsible for that, meaning the Mesilla Valley MPO. The second thing that it's also doing is that last month, but actually I think back in October, the policy board had also approved action on having us include planning emphasis areas for the UPWP so that we can assess and engage transportation partners that are adjacent to the planning area. So what this MOA or MOU does, the MOA, sorry, is that it memorializes the planning activities between the Mesilla Valley MPO along with the El Paso MPO, and also it addresses the directive from the FHWA and the FTA planning activities. With that, anybody has any questions?
Any questions? All right, this item requires action as well.
Move to approve?
So motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Let's skip over to item number 7. Approve the amendment for the fiscal year 2014-2015 Unified Planning Work Program to $425,000 of New Mexico State Planning and Research SPR funds.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I'm Isela, the accountant for the El Paso MPO. The MPO is requesting approval from the board to amend the FY 14-15 Unified Planning Work Program, which is our UPWP, in order to program $340,000 of New Mexico, I'm so sorry, New Mexico State Planning and Research Funds, and $85,000 of state match for a total of $425,000, and the $425,000 will be used for the travel demand model.
Okay. Anything to add, Mike?
Right, so essentially what we're asking the policy board is to approve this. What it would allow us to do is engage the TxDOT and the New Mexico DOT so that we can start the travel demand model. What we're looking at here is developing a validated and calibrated 2012 base year. Once we have this base year validated, then from there it would have a shelf life of 10 years. And it would be probably the next vehicle for MTP planning.
Okay. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved?
There's a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Item number 8, approve the fiscal year 2014-2015 Texas Transportation Alternatives Program projects for inclusion in the statewide transportation improvement program.
Again, Michael Mina with the El Paso MPO, is that I believe on Wednesday I had communicated to the policy board that we had received the 2015 UTP reconciliation funding. And so with that is that we also here at the MPO looked at assessing the possibility of funding all the projects that were submitted during the 2014-2015 TAP call. I believe there was about 11, and I think last month the policy board forward for approval. So we have a presentation, we'd like you to entertain that. And at the end of the presentation, I would also like to entertain a floor amendment to the motion.
Good morning, Board. Christina Stokes with El Paso MPO. We had previously submitted to you the list of projects that were selected, and you had approved those projects. The next step is to actually have those projects amended into our planning documents, which is why we're here today. And in looking at some of the projects that we've had, and we were looking at the funding, we had originally a shortfall of about $40,000, which any shortfall that we would have, we would be able to supplement with any type of funding that we had available. The understanding at that time was that the fund allocation was at an 80-20 funding type, but actually the TAP funding is 100%, which increased the amount that we would be over-programmed, and that would be about $775,670. Well, after identifying this amount, the MPO immediately coordinated with TxDOT to review the UTP allocations for all the funding categories, which included the recent reconciliation of funds. So we would be able to fund all the projects with TAP. State Spur would be partially funded with TAP, and the remaining over-programming amount we'd be able to fund that with Category 12 CMAQ. In reviewing the categories of funding through the reconciliation, the staff were also able to identify categories that were available to support all of the 2014-2015 TAP projects that were submitted for the call. The only exception would be that these projects should be for construction phase only, because there is no time to work with the design and be able to have the projects obligated in fiscal year 15. So as you can see, the amounts that were provided by the entities showing us a breakdown for construction only. You see the Independence Drive now at $503,520, Wrestler Drive at $260,130, River Bend at $804,210, and Viscount at $380,540. Applying these, as the entities had mentioned that they would like to have had their projects in 2015, this is the alternative to being able to make that happen. And we recommend that the TAP funding for 2016 that was being reviewed by the TPAC go to the last two remaining projects for the ones that were not selected, which is the Safe Routes to School for Socorro at $500,000 and the UTEP project, the Hawthorne Street Pedestrian and Bike Enhancement at $480,290. Being that they would be in 2016, they would probably be able to have both their PE and construction funded, because it's out that much further and they have the time to do that, and there is the ability to do that. And we will be presenting some scenarios to show you the types of funding that we would be able to use to cover these projects for 2015. So we are asking for the amendment in the 2040 MTP, the 2015-2018 Horizon TIP to include these projects. We recently were notified, I believe on Tuesday, that our new tip was approved. So we now have a new tip, and these are where these projects would be placed. Public comment began on December 2nd. We were hoping that we would be able to have this available, so we knew that the board might want to consider adding all the projects in, so we tried to start public involvement as soon as we could, if that was the route that the board wanted to take. The approval of the projects in these plans would mean that we need to submit for the November STIP revision. And it sounds funny because we're already in December, but there was a delay because of the pending approval of the 2015-2018 TIP. So with that, all documentation that we would need to have these projects submitted for the STIP revision is with a deadline as of December 8th. So we've been trying to coordinate with the agencies to get all the paperwork in and all the project information so that we would be able to have these submitted into the STIP at as earliest as we can. If for any reason the board does not feel that all the projects need to be funded or we're unable to do so, the next opportunity to have any other projects put into the new TIP is going to be in February, and it would go to this, of course, the statewide TIP. So that is where we are right now. We would go ahead and present the scenarios to you. Look at all the projects and you know, your ability to have all of them funded it's a great opportunity. So with that, I'll just be open to questions.
To the chair.
Yes, ma'am.
So when you need an amendment, we amend I guess we're amending what we did last month?
Yes.
Okay, to include all the projects
Well,
with a reconciliated amount.
if that's what the board wishes to do, because we presented the option, we will be presenting the options to fund all the TAP projects. The ones that were selected are the ones we were requesting first, because those have gone through the board, those have been approved, and we just need to have those put into our new planning document. However, this is a good opportunity for all the other projects to be funded as well in 2015 if the board
ones
chooses to do it.
the
That
ones
were not selected.
Selected last month.
Right.
So the amendment would include all of them, including Socorro, including the city of El Paso, and UTEP. Is that correct?
Yes, and with the Socorro and UTEP being submitted for 2015 TAP, because there aren't enough TAP funds in 2015. They would be the only ones that would be using 2016 funds.
Okay. So the city of El Paso would be using 2015?
Yes,
And UTEP and Socorro would be using 2016?
yes. Yes.
Okay. And the agencies are okay with that? I mean,
I believe they've all agreed to that, yes.
Okay. Let me, Mayor Miller?
Through the chair. Because this board approved some projects for Horizon City last month, we met with TxDOT and looked at the timelines, and they're really scary. And that's why we are pushing to have these included in the STIP, and fortunately, we were able to get them into the November STIP. It was really going to be very difficult to get these completed, particularly one of them that lets in May, before that. So that's why I really pushed to have this included in the TIP. After we put this agenda item on there, then we found out that we could fund all of them, which is a good thing. And so in an effort to get everything moving forward like we all wanted it to, as much as we can, we have worked this out to where we can fund all these projects. That's a real good thing. And if you would indulge me, because we had to post the item, there's a certain way we have to do these. We couldn't include the 2016 money in this agenda item. So we really can't consider the 2016 dollars for action today.
so what are we considering today? Just the 2015?
Just the 2015 money.
Funding? And that, Mr. Oakson, that includes 2015 includes what you just mentioned, the 4 city projects, UTEP, and Socorro, or just the 4? 2016.
Right, I guess, Lugo, if you could jump just to scenario 3, so that I can see. So as part of the information that I had also sent yesterday, is that what we're proposing here, let's start with the top, is that this policy board, if the desire is to do this, is that it would award the city of Socorro along with UTEP, the federal fiscal year 2016 TAP dollars. And I'm confident in saying this because, again, these two projects have also gone through a competitive process. Along with this scenario 3 proposal, we are including the city of El Paso 4 projects. And the way to fund these is by utilizing the Category 12 CMAQ dollars for fiscal year 2015. So we would be including these 4 projects into the November STIP along with the original 4 that the policy board approved. What I would ask that the policy board direct us is to include the remaining 2, which is the City of Socorro and the UTEP projects, for inclusion into the planning documents for the February STIP. So going back to the calendar you all approved a couple minutes ago, we would bring it back in mid-January and make that submission.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Or 2 motions?
I think potentially there'll be 3.
3 motions.
Yes, ma'am.
So the first motion would be to approve the City of El Paso projects for 2015. No?
If
Mayor.
you would indulge me a little bit,
Okay, go ahead.
I would move that we first approve the fiscal 2014-2015 TAP projects as approved in October with necessary 2015 reconciliation fund projects for inclusion in the Horizon 2040 MTP, the Horizon 2015-2018 TIP, and the 2015-2018 STIP.
Second.
Okay.
Okay.
Did we?
There is a motion and a second. Well, is there any further discussion on this before we proceed? Okay, there's a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Okay. And then as the second part of this, and it just occurred to me that this motion would include these other projects in the STIP, however, this board hadn't approved them yet. So I guess my first motion would be to approve the TAP projects submitted by the city to be funded by CMAQ dollars to be approved by the board. Is that correct?
Well, I think what we would ask the policy board is to approve the 2015 reconciliation funds for the city of El Paso for inclusion in the Horizon 2040 MTP, Horizon 2015-2018 TIP, and 2015-2018 STEP.
What he said is what I'd move.
Okay, any further discussion? There's a motion and a second. All in
Okay.
favor?
Aye. And the third portion of this would be direct staff to bring the 2016 TAP projects from Socorro and UTEP before the policy board in January for inclusion in the STEP.
Okay, well, that we can't take action on, right?
We can direct.
But we can,
We can direct.
You're actually just directing the staff to do that. You don't need
So-
to take the action on that.
right, so we don't need a motion and a second for that.
And that
So we can just,
That one includes the City of Socorro and UTEP.
Yes, ma'am.
yes. So for that, we're just, if you can, Mayor Miller, so we're directing staff
To do that.
to bring the 2016 TAP projects before the policy board in January for inclusion in the STEP.
To the chair.
Yes, ma'am.
I just want clarification, just so I make sure, because there's a lot of jargon. And so we just approved scenario 3?
Yes, ma'am.
All right.
Without the 16.
Want to make sure.
So the approval is to bring in the city of El Paso for
Great.
the reconciliation in 2015.
Super, thank you. Thank you very much to the board.
Mayor Miller, thanks for bringing it up. Thanks.
All right, so that is item 6. Item 7, regarding the request of videotaping transportation project advisory committee meetings, having video meetings available online and having the minutes of meetings available prior to the next TPAC meeting.
Item 6.
Representative Acosta?
I had placed this item and I had asked the chair, we discussed it about a couple of months ago, and in trying to get some information concerning the Transportation Project Advisory Committee, number one, what I'd like to do is, ask that the website be a little bit more user-friendly. It's difficult to navigate through it. Not just yours, ours is too, but it's difficult. And then the other thing was that there is no video available for the Transportation Project Advisory Committee meetings. So it's difficult to find out, what happened. There's audio that you will be made available to you if it's requested, but it's not online. And so I asked if, I wanted to know for the purposes of transparency, why we didn't have video for the TPAC meetings, because they are public meetings and they are posted even in the newspaper. And so I think we had that conversation, and I think Mr. Medina was going to come back and give us some scenarios. And so I guess I'll ask Mr. Medina, there's actually, you have current what you're spending right now, and then you have a scenario 1, which makes it kind of unreasonable, and then a scenario 2, which makes it kind of reasonable. But I don't understand the differences, so you would explain.
Yes, ma'am, absolutely. So what we did is that we provided a current cost to the MPO, and then also a scenario 1 and scenario 2. Scenario 1 would include not only the videotaping, it would also include the verbatim of the motions or the minutes. Okay. And then also, I think one thing that this policy board should also entertain is that we have the attorney at all our meetings. Scenario 2, what it demonstrates is simply the videotaping. And again, what I wanted to do is just show across the board for these committees is that if we were to not only videotape TPAC, but also the executive committee, because I believe that transparency is paramount, and have it listed on our website, this would be the cost. But certainly this policy board can direct us to first start with TPAC and then move up to the executive committee. So if the intent is to simply videotape and have it available for the public, scenario 2 would bring videotaping to the TPAC along with the legal services for a little over $18,000.
Okay, so that added cost would be what, about $18,000?
Yes, ma'am. That's the estimate that we have.
And is that something that you can absorb in your budget? Is that?
Right now, yes, ma'am.
Yes. And to the chair, I don't know if we need a motion on this to direct it, or if Mr. Medina already has that direction to move in that direction.
Right, certainly.
In videotaping for transparency and hopefully it'll be placed somewhere where people can get to it.
Right.
So if it's a motion that's needed, then I would make a motion to accept Mr. Medina's scenario 2.
Second. I got a question. I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Mr. Mayor.
Now, once we get this online and do this, do we have a way of tracking of utilization so we can make sure it becomes cost effective? So next year when we look at it, we can say we did have it available and it had so many hits, so many viewings, and
Yes.
continue to. So can we make sure that's on there to track utilization somehow?
Yes, sir. The answer is yes. I think one thing that I wanted to stress is that when we develop the next work plan, is that we'll include everything as a whole. Right now, once you direct us or you take the motion to do this, is that we'll have to solicit 3 bids. We currently obviously have somebody doing it now, but for TPAC, we would have to go out there and do that.
And to the chair.
Mayor Miller first.
Just as a question, we're adding $16,000 or so to your budget. Where is that $16,000 coming from? Is something suffering because of that $16,000?
Well, I think we could look at the administrative costs is where it falls under. I mean, we currently have the services and we do account for, anything that the board needs. So there's some flexibility built into it.
Okay, so you're not actually taking
Right.
money
I
from
don't
here
think.
to pay Paul?
Yes, sir. At this point, I don't think we're letting anybody go to have the service.
Okay.
You're right.
Representative Costa.
And to the chair, I don't know when the EPMPO is going to be moving downtown, but I think Judge Escobar made a very good comment last month. When you're closer to the city facilities, that it probably would be maybe easier for, say, the city or even the county to say, well, we can videotape because we have the equipment. So so this is something that we need to look at. like in a year or after after the MPO moves downtown. I think it's going to be something that maybe only in the short term we would have this cost, and then once we do that, the city would step in, or, because we are the fiscal agents, and say, well, the meetings can take place at City Hall, and, you know, we have videotaping available. So I think it would be maybe just a short term. I don't know when you're moving, when this would happen. But as far as whether people are watching it or not watching it, I think it's something that we as elected officials need to ensure that we're accountable, that we're transparent, and that anyone that has any questions, the video's there, go watch it. You know, everything is we're there and we're accountable. So, you know, I would like to see that. But again, with future forethought, that in the future, maybe the city can actually step in and assist in the taping of those meetings.
Okay, very well. I guess when the MPO moves, and I believe every indication I'm getting is a solid April move to downtown.
April of this year?
Of 2015. Yes, ma'am, April. And so by that time, we'll be working on our new work plan, and certainly if there's an opportunity to partner with the fiscal agent to videotape, we'll do that.
The Chair? I think that's an excellent recommendation. However, if we know we're moving and if we're going to go in a direction of asking the county or the city to step in and help out in any major way to save us some money, I wouldn't wait until after we move in case there's some sort of build out that either one of us need ahead of time, so we know what the facilities or any kind of infrastructure we need to put in ahead of time. I would talk to both county and city and see what their people, IT, need to be able to do this. So if we're going to do this, I would reach out to them before we move or during the process instead of after we move. And go back and retrofit something.
Yes, sir, certainly I think we can do that. And I guess if you would allow me the time to do that, if I would just ask if this be postponed, if you like. If not, we could still do that.
So then you're saying we're postponing this, we can postpone it for a month,
Okay.
so that we can, and we'll talk to our staff. If you're moving in April, then maybe we can just take over that function. But I'd have to know, and I'd have to know there's a cost to it. I don't know.
Yes, ma'am. Okay.
I don't know, I have Dr. Sutter here, that our CFO, that will look at those numbers. But I think it's something that, for transparency and accountability, I think it's something that's worth it. I think it's something that we need to do. And also, you know, your website, maybe you need assistance in that, to make it more easily user-friendly. I will also add that to it. So I don't know that we need a motion any longer. I withdraw my motion and postpone it for a month.
Mayor Lisa?
You know, this is a great idea for transparency and doing that. Do we have a way of making sure that people know it's available or will be available, so they do have the opportunity, the ability to tune in? You know, so, I mean, it's a great idea to do, but we need to make sure that we have a way of communicating that it will be available.
Okay. We can look at that as well.
And then just to the comment about whether you can tell who's viewing it or not, the City of Socorro, we put ours on the YouTube page, and so we link it to our website as well. So you can see how many people view it as you go. And we also put videos on our Facebook page as well. So yesterday we posted a video, and so far we have 161 views. So it's very easy to track how many people are seeing it, whether it's cost effective or not.
Great.
Thank you, Mayor.
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Doolittle?
Mike, I have one question. Currently, it shows that staff is preparing the motions, and it's also tracking attendance and whatnot. Scenario 2 shows a verbatim, but scenario 1 shows a verbatim, but scenario 2 shows no staff involvement. Does that basically mean our summary of the motions goes away?
No.
So what is that $264 cost?
Part of the original posting is a scenario. If you look at items 6B and B and C, so what we're talking about here is C. Is that right now what staff does is prepare the motions or the minutes. It's not verbatim. That's what we're eliminating, if you will. That's a cost savings. If we adopt scenario 2, simply it's the videotaping. So nothing changes. The only thing we're doing here is looking at the opportunity to videotape the TPAC.
So are the costs that you're showing up there the differences in the costs, or is that an itemized? It just appears in scenario 2 there is no staff cost or involvement at all. Am I missing something?
Okay, so what I'm seeing here is that if we look at the current cost for TPAC, just a little under $200, that would be the same.
So we would need to include it in scenario.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that would bump up to just over 19,000.
Okay. I would just state, even if we're going to videotape, I mean, these quick summaries for me are pretty valuable. When you're preparing for next month's meeting and whatnot, I would just hate for those to go away, and that's just what it looked like happened in scenario 2.
Yeah, thanks for pointing that out.
You would still, to the chair, you would
Yes, ma'am.
still have the minutes. I mean, you
Yeah, we would still
have-
do it. It was just a,
That doesn't go away. Minutes
Right.
don't go away. They're still posted. And if they're summarized, I mean, that's what the city of El Paso does. Post the item and then the motion and then we voted on it. That doesn't go away. That's part of the accountability and transparency.
And I think it needs to, I was just pointing out in scenario 2, that cost is not included.
I think because staff, I believe because staff is already there and they're already taking the
Yeah.
information versus having to transcribe everything verbatim.
right.
Okay.
Yes, yeah, so again, I just apologize, it's an oversight on our behalf. And just for clarification, what we're looking at here is the videotaping for TPAC. Okay.
Thank you.
And Mr. Medina, I mean, something that I've brought up before is that yeah, I've heard from many individuals who tried to stream into MPO meetings that they have difficulty doing so during the live streaming of meetings. I mean, I don't know if that's something that staff has looked into or can be looked into, but I've heard from many folks who have tried to access the meetings as they occur that there's difficulty or there's frequent pauses and it gets stuck and I don't know if that's an issue of bandwidth or.
Yeah, I believe that there's a lot of, noise behind that, but I think ultimately moving downtown and having the opportunity to work with the fiscal agent would provide that,
Okay.
for it to be addressed.
Okay. So Representative Costa, you withdraw this or post?
Yes, I think we should postpone it for a month and then we can come back next month. And I've just, asked the CFO if he could give us some numbers next month and we could do it and what that cost would be. The city absorbs it in April. And then that way the MPO doesn't have that added cost, or the cost would be maybe significantly less.
Okay.
So
So
I'd
you-
like to postpone it for 1 month.
So there's a motion to postpone this item for 1 month. Is there a second?
Second.
There's a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Moving on, item number 9, approve requests to excuse the absent TPB members from the meeting. We have Representative Mary Gonzalez, Representative Naomi Gonzalez, City Manager Tommy Gonzalez, Representative Marisa Marquez, Representative Joe Moody, Representative Pickett, Mayor Madeline Preno, and Mayor Luis Vela. Am I missing anyone from?
If you're not here, raise your hand.
And if you're not here, raise your hand. Okay, is there a motion to excuse the? Okay, there's a motion. Is there a second? There's a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. And I think next is the Executive Director's Report.
Again, good morning, Michael Mann with the El Paso MPO. We have 2 presentations. The first one is the Proposition 1, which will be led by one of the staff. And then the second is also another presentation discussing the 5310 program that we have. So Ugo will take the first charge.
Hello, board members. Hugo Hernandez with El Paso MPO. Before you is just a simple summary of the Proposition 1 call. There were 11 projects submitted with a total of $106 million. There were 6 City of El Paso, 4 from TxDOT, and 1 County of El Paso project. There is a list of the projects with the individual costs. And also, this is a brief summary guidelines. We haven't got the final version of the guidelines from the Proposition 1 and what projects we can program. However, it was pointed out that the Proposition 1 money may not be used on toll projects, may not be used on off-road system, on off-system projects, and it can only be, may not be used on non-roadway projects, so it's only roadway projects. They desire to commit for 2015 projects. Even though it's a little late in the year, we still pending additional information. They encourage collaboration from the districts and the MPOs to deliver really, really needed projects that impact all counties. The next steps would be to receive the final guidelines and specifications from the district, take whatever projects we can program to TPAC for their recommendation and evaluation, go through public involvement, finally come back to this board for your approval and inclusion into the MTP and TIP, and submit into the STIP. I don't know if the district has any additional information in regards to the guidelines and Proposition 1.
Mr. Beal?
No, we have no additional information.
Short and simple. Okay.
No, you understand that this has to go through the legislature, and there could be lots of changes to what happens by the time it gets back to us. But based on what we hear now, not using it on toll projects is an absolute. Not being able to use it off-system, as far as we know, is an absolute. And it has to be used on roadway projects. Again, that's what we're hearing from the committees in the legislature that are looking at it, so. And we also are told that it's going to have to be 15 projects, so.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Anything else in?
I'm sorry, it has to be, what, 15 projects?
They have to be fiscal year 15
All fiscal
projects.
year 15
Let them
projects.
in this fiscal year.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? And that's all we
Okay,
have.
is that all for the executive director's report?
The WTEP?
No, I don't.
Mr. Medina?
Efraín Mesa with the El Paso MPO. Basically, what we've been doing is moving forward with our FTA 5310 Enhanced Mobility for Seniors and Individuals with Disabilities grant. And we had an engagement opportunity with the Far West Texas El Paso Regional Transportation Coordination Committee to do some public engagement. And what they're doing is they're moving forward with trying to get some public and stakeholder comments regarding some their 5310 guide and the priorities that they see and the public sees for these particular programs. There is the potential a setting of these project priorities, as well as identifying potential additional needs and informing the public of the particular programs that we are presenting to the public and the grant itself. The MPO is going out and also showing a review of some amendments made to their project management plan for 5310. These amendments were made, and they're small, somewhat administrative amendments. There's some verbiage in there that wasn't included regarding transportation development credits and how they're processed, as well as we're presenting a draft request for proposals application. There's information regarding the process with the RFP and the grant awarding. And eventually there'll be some dates regarding the release of the RFP and the deadlines for the submittals. Along with that, we have some draft review criteria that's available that will be used by the TPAC and the TPB to review these submittals for the 5310 grant. Along with this, here are some dates that some of the meetings we've already had for the 6 meetings we're going to have with WTEP. We are looking at possibly getting some requests from some of the city reps, and we are taking requests from many agencies as well, like we usually do for any presentations that they want us to do at some of their meetings as well. We tried piggybacking on some of the meetings. As you notice, we had a Villar Center of Independent Living one yesterday afternoon. We'll be having one next week at the City of Socorro Senior Nutrition Center. And that's sort of piggybacking on some other meetings that are going on. So this way we get a little bit of the demographic that actually utilizes this particular grant and the transportation services that it provides. Everything that I mentioned in regards to what's out for review is on the website. One of the things that isn't on there that we just put on yesterday is the actual survey that WTIP has. We also have that on our website. It's on the homepage under public review. Really easy to get to, really easy to fill out for the public. So if there's any chance of you spreading the word, it'd be greatly appreciated so we can find out what the public thinks of some of the priority needs are for this region. Any questions?
Any questions?
I was ready.
How long a time frame are you holding meetings? What's the time frame for
Well,
holding the meetings?
the last meeting we have is on the 10th, but I had mentioned to some of the people at the meetings that we'll go as far as the middle of January before the board meets in January, to have, to go and meet with other agencies for their meetings, give presentations, et cetera. We will have everything out until then on the website. So, WTIP, on the other hand, for their priority survey, they may end it by the end of this month. They may still, but I'm pretty sure they'll still have it out to just collect some data.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, for executive director's report. All right. Moving on to the monthly report, we're going to update on the Union Pacific Railroad double track project is next.
Good morning, Commissioner Perez and distinguished members of the MPO board. I appreciate the opportunity to come and speak with you. Today I wanted to present you an update on a very important project to Union Pacific. Before I do that, I wanted to introduce some members of our team that are here today. Is our local managers, Frank Fuentes and David Lucero. Frank's a graduate of Isleta High, right? And David's a graduate of Riverside, right? So whenever I get the complaints from, I won't mention names, but from District 3 or District 7 of train horns, that's usually who I call, and they wanted to join me today to be here and see if there's any concerns that they could help with as well. And thank you to Mayela and a friend for helping me get on the agenda. But so I know that I think most of you are pretty familiar with Union Pacific. There are a few members that might not be, so I'm going to try to breeze through the first few slides of the presentation. If you want me to slow down and spend a little bit more time on one of the slides, please ask me to do so. But having said that, this is what I'll cover today. If we go to the next slide. So our franchise really, I wanted to show you this slide just so you can kind of see what's going on. And of course, El Paso for us is a huge east to west and west to east gateway, primarily from Asia. And you see LA there. There's a very large deep sea port in Los Angeles, as well as Long Beach, very close to there. And so that's a lot of the trains that you're seeing are coming to and from Los Angeles and Houston, and they use the United States as a land bridge for the most part, whatever's not consumed here in this country, to go from Asia to other countries and vice versa. So this is what we have in El Paso in terms of infrastructure and operations. You'll see we give our rail lines very creative names based on where they go. We're very secretive and mysterious, like the Lordsburg subdivision goes to Lordsburg, and the Valentine subdivision goes to Mayor Miller's hometown of Valentine. But in our trains, actually, we're a little bit closer to about 60. We just are coming on the tail end of our peak shipping season as retailers are stocking up for Black Friday and for that big shopping weekend. That's when we really hit our stride in terms of peak shipping season. So you may have seen a lot more trains. And whenever we get in that time, we can see upwards of close to 70 trains per day here running through this area. You'll see that we have 500 employees. That's growing. We've hired 100 new employees, both to accommodate for retiring and also a net gain. And we've gone on record at saying that we think we're going to be very close to 1,000 employees in the area by 2020, when all of these projects are complete. So this is the same thing that I was mentioning in terms of how the freight moves in and out and through El Paso, primarily connecting the West Coast to the primary markets of Chicago, Dallas, Fort Worth, and San Antonio and Houston, and then eventually New Orleans. And that's where our rail lines end. A lot of that product ends up on the East Coast as well in the major population centers. But this is where all the rail lines split up. So the first rail line splits up through the 5 Points neighborhood. That's our Carrizozo line that eventually ends up in Chicago. So out of those 60 trains or so, about 1/3 go up that rail line. And then the remaining 40 or so go through the Valley and Socorro and Clint. And the next rail line splits up in Sierra Blanca. And about another third of that traffic goes up to Dallas-Fort Worth, and then the other third of the traffic keeps going on to San Antonio and Houston. And near Del Rio, it combines with the Eagle Pass rail line that comes in and out of Mexico. So this is what Union Pacific strategy really has been, is we're trying to get very truck competitive on this route. We're trying to transfer a lot of those trucks, and I think that Bob would like to see us do even more of that. Transfer those freight trucks from I-10 onto our rail lines, and to do that you have to be very competitive in terms of your rates and also your time. So what we've done is we've spent about $1 billion over the last 10 years on the Sunset route, double tracking it, and we're almost entirely double tracked, as you can see there, from El Paso to LA. And so this is going to be the next phase of it, and you'll see there, of course, Santa Teresa. The reason why it was built where it was built is because it's right before the lines split up, and we spent there, the number says 400. I think the actual cost of the project was about $500 million for us. This is what we do at Santa Teresa, is we have the intermodal ramp where we actually can bring containers from Asia with products into this major market here, and it'll come on ships from Asia onto the Port of Los Angeles. For example, a big crane will transport or transfer them to a train. They'll then come all the way to Santa Teresa, and they will unload there. We provide the same service on outbound. So if you're a shipper here, if you're a producer of any type of product or manufacturing, you need to get your product out to market, you can have it picked up by truck, drive to Santa Teresa, drop off the container, a crane will put it on a train, and then you can send it to Chicago, New York City, Houston, LA, to go to Asia, to go to Europe, to go to Latin America, really. So this is a huge gateway for us in terms of intermodal traffic. We also do our fueling and our inspections there. As you can see, we estimate that we inspect and fuel about 200 locomotives per day. Each locomotive carries about 5,000 gallons of fuel. So it's a tremendous amount, and this is where they come through Texas and they need to be refueled before they head to California, or vice versa. As they're getting ready to traverse Texas, they need to be refueled. So we fill them up to 5,000 gallons of diesel fuel. And then we change our crews there. So our crews are still, for the most part, they didn't move. We're seeing some movement from East El Paso to West El Paso, but the vast majority of our employees still live in El Paso, and they just commute to Santa Teresa to go to work. They leave their car there, hop on a train, go to any of these destinations, and then they come back the next day or the day after. So you'll see here again, one Union Pacific train can take off 300 trucks off of the highway. So if the freight that we move, if Union Pacific wasn't provided this service, the freight that we move was moving on I-10, it'd be the equivalent of adding 18,000 trucks per day on I-10 moving through El Paso. So that's the kind of impact that we can have with our partners at TxDOT as well to combine. And as you can see here, of course, roads are very expensive. That's what you guys do here, right? A lot of it is planned for transportation, very expensive. There's not a whole lot of money growing and being added to that budget. And the rail industry right now, thankfully, is very healthy. And we invest in our own network by the revenues that we make from our customers who pay us to ship their products. And so it's no cost to the taxpayer. We're funding all this ourselves. You can also see that I always use this slide because I live in San Antonio. My hometown is Brownsville. And you can see there that we can move 1 ton of freight about 480 miles on 1 gallon of diesel fuel. So if my vehicle that got that kind of mileage, I can go from San Antonio to Brownsville, see my mom, come back to San Antonio on 1 gallon of fuel. And when you start thinking that way is whenever the mayor and others are out attracting new companies, if you're going to attract a Toyota, a Tesla, for example, who we had conversations to come to Santa Teresa and El Paso region, and they need to ship out massive amounts of freight, you really cannot do it by truck to be cost competitive. And really, you don't want it moving by truck because it's having a negative impact on your air quality. You really want it moving away from I-10 on trucks, which is a cleaner way to transport as well. So now to the main reason why I'm here is we're going to be adding another track. Currently, we're double tracked through El Paso, and we finished just east of Zaragoza, where the rail line comes back to one line. And so it's a choke point for us as you have that traffic moving pretty fluidly until there. And so what we're going to be doing is we're going to go ahead and add another track so that trains can move in and out of our terminal at Alfalfa Yard, as we call it, which is right there. The east terminus of that rail yard is right under the Carolina Bridge, to give you an idea of the big rail yard that we have there. So we're going to begin near Inglewood Road, east of Loop 375, and we're going to conclude near Sealam Road, east of Clint. So we're going to double track about 11 miles of rail. We have plans to extend by 2018 out to Sierra Blanca. So as you can see, we're basically trying to add capacity to be able to put more trains through that area. By 2018, we're going to be about 60% double track to Sierra Blanca. The Phase 1, which is the project that I'm here to talk to you about today, is scheduled to begin in the second quarter of 2015. And it should conclude before 2016, but I left it there as a blank just because, as you all know, with construction timelines, sometimes they can be moved up or be moved back. The total investment per phase is $35 million. So by 2018, we will have spent $150 million adding a double track between El Paso and Sierra Blanca to add to the $600 or $500 million that we spent in Santa Teresa. And when you figure in some of the other things that we're going to be doing within the El Paso terminal, we're going to come pretty close to spending $1 billion in this area in 10 years. So we're very excited about our growth potential here. We're very excited about what we're doing. The way that we construct our tracks, or really what the impact to the public will be, is that we bring a lot of employees, sometimes 100 employees or so. They'll come in, they'll stay at the hotels here, and they'll just go to work every day, 7 a.m., and they'll work on the track as long as there's sunlight, and they'll begin laying that track coming on, and they'll be eating locally. They'll be spending, that's in addition to the $150 million that we're spending that will go into the economy here locally. The impact to the public will mostly be centered on the crossings. You'll probably hear Commissioner Perez, and we met with Mayor Reinhardt here. You'll probably hear some complaints while we're doing work on the crossings, that the crossing might be closed for a day or two while we do the work, or 3 or 4, however many days. It doesn't take extremely long, but it might impact your traffic, but it'll actually improve traffic flow because we'll also balance out our approaches. The crossings will be nicer. I have a picture here coming up there. And we're also meeting, so we had a meeting with Mayor Reinhardt already. We're meeting with the county here after the meeting with TxDOT. We have a meeting with the city with Ms. Ramirez. So we're trying to be very transparent about what we're doing and make sure that people know that we're doing, so that when you get those phone calls, you know how to answer them, or at least know who to contact about it. We have a contractor. We will need some permits, especially as it comes to shutting down the road, obviously, while we do the work. So you'll start hearing from our contractors pretty soon. And then there's also potential for public-private partnerships. Anytime you're spending $150 million in an area and you're going to have that many employees, now's the time to let us know, especially for those in east of El Paso, if there's projects that we need to be doing while we have all this manpower and all this investment going in. So I know the city of Socorro mentioned maybe mowing our right-of-way, and I worked with the mayor on clearing some dead trees and the like. So now's probably a good time to start that conversation. Then obviously, you know, Union Pacific has been beating the drum of the reason why we're spending close to $1 billion in El Paso is because we think there's going to be more train traffic through here, right? We're going to get a return on our investment. And obviously, El Paso and the surrounding communities are growing tremendously. So we continue to beat the drum and continue to ask our public partners, especially those of you in attendance, to continue to plan for great separations as much as we can, because we have 60 trains now. You might have 80 trains, 90 trains, 100 trains someday. And that interaction with the public and the train traffic at rail crossings will just become more time-consuming for people. So if we can partner together on being able to consolidate crossings, come over the tracks or under the tracks, obviously benefits the railroad, but I also think it definitely benefits the public. These are the crossings that we will be going through. Most of them are county roads. We're trying to figure out, Inglewood Road shows in our system as a county road, but the county tells us it's actually within the city of El Paso. So that's why we're meeting with the city of El Paso. Then we have all those roads from Nevades to Bauman showing as county roads in our system, but they're all in Socorro, so that's why we're meeting with Socorro. And then you'll see Bird Bridge, which is in the county, FM 110 and Killam, which are in Clint. But I think that Killam is a county road, and I think that FM 110 is a state road. And then we have a couple of private crossings that will be affected as well. Also, if you know any folks that have private crossings on the railroad to get in and out of their property, you might tell them to reach out to us also, because as we come in with those tracks, we're researching to see if those private crossings are authorized, and some of those crossings may not be there. They might expect that they've had that crossing for a long time, but as we come in and add another track, if that crossing wasn't supposed to be there, they might not have it. So if you get any interaction with people like that out in the rural areas, you might want to share that with them. And then the next slide basically shows you what the project's gonna look like. So that's what our single track looks like. Most of our crossings in El Paso are pretty good. I hope you would agree that when you go over the tracks, they're not as rough as they used to be at some point, because we had already gone through El Paso a few years back and put in these concrete planks that you see in between the rails. And that's what the second line is, what you'll see in some of those lines. What we always work with, for example, with Ted and Irene very closely when we do this in El Paso, is we partner, because we do raise the track about an inch or two whenever we come through, and over 20 years or so, the track will settle and it'll get back to the original state. But for a while, people will say, hey man, it's a rough ride. When I go over, it's higher than it used to be. So there's definitely needs to be work that goes into the approaches on those crossings. And then with that, I'll open it up to any questions. And then the last picture I have is of Santa Teresa before it opened. It's really impressive. If you haven't been out there and you would like to, I would be happy to provide you a tour of it. If you can go to the next slide, it's you could. Oh, I didn't put it. Well, anyway, it's really I'm really proud of it. We're really proud of it because it's a little bit over 12 miles in from east to west. So you can almost run a half a marathon from one end of our rail yard to the other. It's just extremely impressive, and I'm really proud that the company made that kind of investment on the border. It's really exciting times.
Thank you for your presentation today. When you do these construction projects through communities, I know a tremendous amount of the right-of-way that you have next to the railroad tracks in some areas isn't very aesthetically pleasing. Do you ever consider making investments in that right-of-way by, improvements with vegetation, landscaping? Have you done that in the past in other communities? Is there any thought to wanting to do that in ours?
That's a good question, Representative Nyland. So we don't really spend a lot of time on keeping it looking too great, as you pointed out. We just keep it safe. That's really what we do. So what we offer to do is we partner with municipalities. So for example, with the city of El Paso, in the 5 Points neighborhood, as part of the quiet zone, whenever those happen, there's going to be a beautification project with a fence, a nice ornamental fence. And so in that sense, we're more than willing, and now would be the time to partner on this because we're going to have a lot of employees. So we can mow the vegetation, but we don't really put in like trees or ornamental things because we're more focused on the safety of our employees to be able to walk in and out of it.
Well, I'd just like to bring that to your attention and let you know when you're specifically doing projects within the city of El Paso and there's right-of-way that maybe we can partner with the water utility and there's an opportunity there, I think it'd be really great because some of the right-of-way is just kind of hideous.
Absolutely. No, I appreciate that because it's true. I mean, and absolutely, Representative Nyland.
I appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Any other questions? Question, please. Mr. Rooney?
Thank you, Chairman Mike Rooney. Appreciate you coming down here at least once a year. I get a lot out of your updates. What's the status on the cranes at your yard that's at the southern end of Hawkins? It was my understanding, going back to Chuck Berry, that at one time the city would have, and TxDOT wanted to run a bridge over the railroad tracks there, but because of the height of the cranes, it was just it was too costly. And it was my understanding when this group approved moving, supporting the Strauss project, that those cranes should be moved out sometime around 2017, 2018. So what's the status when you think those cranes will be moved out of there? And thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rooney. That's a great question. I'm glad you brought it up. So the cranes that Mr. Rooney refers to are the cranes that pick up the containers and put them onto trucks or from trucks to trains. They have been moved. We had a brief conversation with Representative Acosta. I know she's very interested in putting that project you speak of an overpass at Hawkins at some point back on the table. But those cranes are gone now, and I think that'd be a great plan to go over. We do have some requirements in terms of going over the tracks, just making sure that pillars don't come down on our track. And we had that one derailment on I-10, right, where it impacted I-10. So we were very careful about where the pillars come down. But having said that, we're more than willing to have those discussions, and the cranes are gone.
Thank you.
Thank you all very much for your time.
One question, Mr. So you say that phase one is going to begin during the second quarter of 2015. I mean, has your company considered having public meetings to inform the residents impacted that this is occurring? Is that something that's been under consideration?
Commissioner, we'd be happy to do that. It's not something we proactively do. We don't go out and call public meetings. But for example, if you or a representative of the city of Socorro or the city of Clint said, hey, you know what, I think this is something that there's going to be a lot of interest in, and I would like to schedule a public meeting, we'd be happy to come and present. Generally, these types of projects don't really attract a lot of attention. Other than the 2 or 3 days that they shut down the road, you do have people that say, well, you know, I want to know ahead of time that this is going to happen. But they're not something in general that have really generated a lot of consternation from citizens. But if that's something that you would like us to do and you have specific communities in mind and you have somebody that we can work with, we would not object to that.
Mayor Reinhardt, I mean, and Mayor Reese, I mean, is that something you're interested in?
They've always offered information to us, and then we just answer the public through our office.
Okay.
As he said, the only time you usually hear from people concerning the railroad tracks and down in the valley is when they can't get across them.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're good as well. We usually, last time they did something on bombing, we put it on our Facebook page so people were aware of it and stuff, so it wasn't an issue.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you,
Thank you for
appreciate it.
presenting.
Thank you.
Next, bi-monthly report. I don't have anything to report. As always, I just want to thank the staff of the MPO for all your work, and I want to wish everyone a Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays and Happy New Year. With that, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved. Second.
There's a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
See you later.
I'm sorry. And the next meeting of the TPB will be January 23rd, 2015.
Yeah, we already did that.